What's up you guys, I'm Cody, and today I'm going to be going over playing with backing tracks. Now, I know this isn't something that everybody's into or everybody wants, but it can help a lot of bands and adds a lot of flavor to a live show. Personally, I'm a huge fan of backing tracks. They're used all over the music industry, and they really help fill out the sound and make a more enjoyable live show for your audience. Now, for anybody wondering what backing tracks are, basically it's just pre-recorded music that's played alongside with the artist. A way to think about this is simply pressing play on an iPod and a musician playing along to it. Now, these backing tracks can have whatever you like in them. They could have guitars, they could have some background vocals, they could have some percussion, they could have some piano, maybe some little ambient sounds or some cymbal swells. Whatever you think fit for your show is what can go in there. Now, whether it comes as a surprise or not, there's actually a ton of musicians that use backing tracks in their live show. Almost any mainstream pop or rock show that you go to, they are going to be using some form of backing tracks within their show. Now, this doesn't take away from their musicianship at all. They're still out there performing as much as they can as individuals, but sometimes it's not always feasible to have 40 people on stage to play every single part of your song. When it comes to the CD recordings of a song, there's often a lot more going on than you realize, and it's not always feasible to have enough people on stage to play all of those parts. So backing tracks is a great option to help fill out that sound. A few years ago, I had a chance to sit down with the Canadian band Headley. Both their bass player and their tour manager were there, and it was super interesting to hear them talk about how they use backtracks within their live show. Basically, they played as much as possible. Their bass player in particular was using MIDI keyboards and MIDI footpads, and he had all of his hands going the whole show. It was absolutely crazy. But there were still so many parts that he wasn't able to play live. So they did have some supplementary backing tracks just to help fill out those sounds and make sure it sounded as much like the record as possible. Now, once again, I don't think this discredits them as musicians at all. They're still out there playing as much as they can and trying to reproduce as much of the music as possible. But they just can't do it all with only 4 guys. You might even be surprised with some of the smaller, more local type shows that you go to with how many of these bands are actually using backing tracks. It's become increasingly popular over the past few years, and it's become very, very easy to do. So more and more bands are doing it. Now, why might you want to use backing tracks in your show? Well, maybe you're only a 3-piece band. Maybe there's only a guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer, and there's just not quite enough musicians there to totally fill out the sound. This might be an opportunity for you to throw in some tambourine in the background, or an extra guitar part, or maybe some piano over top. Something that you wouldn't normally be able to play live on stage. A band like my own, we're only 2 guys. And so we have a lot of stuff going on in our live show that we can't play live. I mean, we try to do as much as possible, but there's just a lot of stuff that we're not able to reproduce on the fly on stage. So that stuff has to come through our backing tracks in order for our show to sound as full as possible and really get the best overall sound quality for our listeners. Now, another reason that can be very, very helpful is one of your members isn't there. I've started to see so many bands that don't have bass players anymore, and simply they'll have a backing track with just the bass guitar in it, and that's all they play to. There's nothing else, but they don't have a bass player. So from their iPod, they'll just send a bass track to the sound guy to help mix in their show and make it sound like a full band. Now, in order to have backing tracks going with your live show, someone in your band is almost always going to have to be playing to a click track. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a video down below on exactly how to do it. Let me show you some ways that we've built our backing tracks. Okay, now let me kind of show you what I did with my own band and how we set up our backing tracks. So we were fortunate enough to have the Pro Tools session and all the individual files for our songs, so it made it really easy to just basically mute out what we're going to play live and then have the rest in the backing tracks. I'm the only one that plays guitar. Shane does some singing, and then we always play with a live drummer. So basically, I muted the lead guitar part, whatever I'm going to play. I muted Shane's main vocal, and then I muted all the drums. And basically, everything else plays behind it. A lot of times, I'm even doubling up when I'm playing rhythm guitar. I have those going. Now, you're not always going to be able to get individual tracks, and that's okay. Maybe you're going to want to record something different and throw that in there, or maybe your producer will be able to send you some stems. Basically, that's what I did once I had it all back, was bounce it down to 3 stems: a percussion stem, a guitar stem, and a vocal stem. I no longer run our tracks through Pro Tools. I used to, but Pro Tools has a tendency of crashing, and I switched over to Ableton. It's just so much more stable live, and I really find it's better for running backing tracks. It's made for a live setting, it has it in the name, but I'm more familiar with Pro Tools, so I thought it'd be easier to build the tracks there and then go from there. So let me show you really quick some of the stuff we have going on. So right off the bat, you're gonna notice there's some sub effects in there if you have some low end and you're not just listening on your phone. That's not really something you can replicate live unless your drummer has a drum pad or something, but I really like bass drops. It's so impactful off the top of a set or at the start of a song and can really add so much energy to it. Also, you'll notice I have the rhythm guitars going. This is because I'm playing the lead guitar part in this section, so the rhythm guitar is just to help fill it out and make it sound more like the record. Now I also just have the bass track muted, but that is going the whole time. Now let me jump to a part where the vocals jump in. You'll notice there's all this yellow stuff is vocals. And you'll notice I have a ton of vocals in there. Basically, I threw in all the vocal harmonies and all the vocal doubles just to help fill it out. Let me show you this section of the chorus. You'll notice that tambourine comes in to help drive that section of the song a little more. Just adds a little bit of flavor to the live show and something that you're not going to get without backing tracks unless you have a tambourine player. But then again, if you want all of these parts in there, you're going to need 30 or 40 people on stage. Even just vocally, there's 4 vocal parts going right there. And we have both Shane singing in that part and me. So there's a total of 6 vocals being played at the same time. And it really helps fill it out. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're singing well and have a really rich sounding voice, but this is another way to add in different layers and different harmonies that people may not necessarily notice on the record, but they'll notice when it's not there. And they'll say, well, that was a really good live show and it sounded good, but it just wasn't the exact same. This is a way that we use tracks to help fill out our show and just, as I mentioned, like add that little bit of flavor to it. Now, these might sound really loud out of context, but keep in mind with all this stuff going in the live show, they are buried in there and it's not something that you're gonna be able to pick out and be like, oh yeah, that's in the backing track or that in the backing track. Maybe the tambourine, because it is a little more piercing and it's very clear that no one's doing that. But for the most part, these vocal harmonies are meant to sit right on top of Shane's main vocal. Now, it is a little challenging for him to sing to this because he needs to make sure that he matches syllable by syllable exactly what's going on there. So in a way, it's actually a little bit more difficult to play 2 backing tracks when you have to be so precise with what you do. You'll also notice through this section, the lead guitars come in really loud. Now I chose to do this because I felt like this was a lead on the record that really helps drive it, and it's a pretty important part of the song, to me at least. Since I am singing here and not able to play that part on the guitar while singing it, and it was just easier for me to just play rhythms, I thought, why not throw it in the backing track? It doesn't need to be super loud. It's just one of those things, again, that's gonna add a little bit of flavor to the show, add that part that someone might be used to hearing on the record. And sure, it's not being played live by me or by another guitar player, but it's there, we have it. Now let me throw in the drums really quick just so you get a context of what this is all gonna sound like together. Now this next section is really cool. We were able to go ahead and throw in this little beat section just to change up our live performance from the record a little bit. We go to this cool kind of like trap drum part. Check it out. So not only do we have that trap drum going, there's also this cool little ambient guitar playing over top. Now again, nothing overly complex or complicated, but it's just something that we recorded on the record and that we really liked. Now again, it is something that could be played live, but again, I'd either have to play something different or we'd have to have a different musician on stage to cover this part. And it really just helps fill out that sound. It adds that ambience and it kind of changes the mood of the song for a second. So I think it's a really great thing that we are able to incorporate to our live show and just build an entire different section of music that nobody has heard just from listening to the record before. Scrolling back down the bottom, basically all I did was send all of these to their individual aux channels. So I have a percussion, guitar, and vocal bus. This way, when I import them into Ableton, I'm able to manipulate them again, just in case I need a little more percussion in one part, or if I think the vocals came out a little too loud. It just gives me another area of flexibility to help really refine the sound. Now, the way I recommend setting this up is have the drummer take care of it all. I know it's not something you want to put in the drummer's hands, but someone's got to do it. The drummer's stationary, they're always going to be back there behind the kit, and it's easy to set up a table or desk beside them to run the tracks. Now, there are a couple ways to set up your backing tracks, but the absolute simplest way to do it is simply just use your phone. What I recommend is pan the click track to the left and then your backing track to the right. That way, you'll be able to monitor the click just yourself, and still be able to hear the backing track to play along. You can also send this backing track to the sound guy so that he has it as well. Really quickly, if you find performance content like this helpful, be sure to give it a like down below so that I know that you're into it, and subscribe for more stuff that I post. It really helps out my channel more than you know. Okay, so let's take a peek at how I throw this all into Ableton now to make it work. Sorry for jumping between different DAWs. It really doesn't matter what workstation you use for this. They're all gonna produce the same results. So whether you're on Logic or Studio One or Pro Tools or Ableton, it really doesn't matter. You can do this. I just happen to use a combination of the two. Whatever you got's gonna do the trick. So as you can see, I imported in my bass track, the percussion track, the guitar track, and the vocal bus. Now I do have some extra stuff. In between our songs, we have little remixes play. I do have lighting programmed to our show, and then all of my guitar changes are done right through Ableton with MIDI commands that send out to my Kemper. So I just go up there, there's no guitar pedals or anything. We just press play and the show kind of goes and we just play along. It makes it really easy as a smaller band to have more production with less work. Now let's give it a listen here and see how it compares to Pro Tools. It does start with this little remix thing, but don't worry about that. Perfect, so it sounds like everything's there from Pro Tools. It imported over exactly how I wanted it to be. And now these are basically just my stems. These are what you're gonna get from your producer, or these are what you'll build yourself, whether you're recording it. And you're just gonna wanna pull these into whatever DAW you work with and balance them all out and get a kind of cohesive sound between it all, something that sounds similar to the recording. Now the reason I have all these on separate tracks is so that I can mix them myself. I run everything out through my Behringer X32, and so normally I'll have them all set out to different outputs. I'll have one on channel 1 and 2, one on channel 3 and 4, one on channel 5 and 6. And I send these out to the front of house audio guy all separately, and then he can mix them together as he sees fit. Now, this does require a little more gear and a mixing console of your own, but so you don't have to do any of that. Essentially, the way you're gonna wanna set this up is, you'll see up here I have my click track and my count in so that we know when to start. You're gonna wanna pan these all the way to the left. And then you're gonna wanna pan all of your tracks all the way to the right. Now this way, when I jump to the chorus, you'll hear the click and the count is only on the left side and the track is only on the right side. Now this is gonna be super easy. To bounce this down is just one track, just a stereo audio file, and put it right on your iPod. This way, when you split it out of your iPod, the left channel will be the click and the right channel will be the track, just like how it's set up right now. This way your drummer will be able to listen to the click, no problem, and be able to listen to the track. And then you'll be able to send this track to front of house without worrying about him accidentally having the click. You're not gonna send that to him. You're only gonna send him the right side with the track in it. Now just to set these all back at 0, just for listening purposes, this count in is super important. Let me jump to a different song as well. It's really difficult to start a song without a count in. It's so beneficial. Mine happens to be in French because the drummer we were playing with speaks French, and I thought it'd be really funny to have un, deux, trois, quatre in there instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. So give it a listen. And the drummer starts this song, so normally that's where the drums will be playing. That's why it's silent with just that ambient guitar over top. Now something really cool you're gonna be able to do within your backing tracks is a little bit of volume automation. As you see here, I have this ambient guitar kind of swell in and swell back out, and it sounds like this. That's why I choose to have these tracks on separate channels so that I can make small adjustments to them as we go along throughout the song and as I want things to sound different. Let me jump forward to some other cool automation parts that I have. In our song Lights Out right here, I needed a little more guitar in this section just because it wasn't quite loud enough the way I originally mixed it. And so all I had to do was go to the guitar bus and just bump it up a few dB right here. Check it out. Now, initially when I was making the tracks, I thought I was going to play that part on the guitar, but it works better for the live show if I don't play guitar there and I just sing those woes and really try to get the crowd involved. So it was really easy for me just to boost that section just a little bit, just enough so that it's still heard, but it's not totally in your face and in the way. Now, you can choose to run your tracks how I do, directly out of Ableton, and it works so well for that. I do highly recommend it, but as I said, you're gonna need a mixer, you're gonna need a pretty comprehensive audio knowledge to do it, and it is a little more difficult. So the best way I recommend starting off is just get your phone and just bounce down a single audio track, a stereo audio track. It's gonna be really easy to do. You just make sure that you pan the stuff to the right side, and it's going to sound great. It's going to really help enhance your live show and just add those elements that you're missing. Now, one thing that I do want to quickly mention is I do not recommend putting acoustic drums in your backing tracks. Reason being is when you're playing in a smaller room or even a little bit bigger of a room, drums are loud. They're super loud. And if you don't have a drummer playing live, you're just not going to sound the same as the other bands. It is not going to sound as good to the audience. So bare minimum, I recommend having a drummer. You can put everything else in the backing track if you want, but just make sure that you have a drummer live. This is so important to making sure that you sound just as good as the band before and after you. Anyways, I hope this has been super helpful. If you do have any questions on how to set up your tracks or need a hand, just drop a comment down below and I'll help you out. Peace.